Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the show. John Henry Soto here with you as always. This is a live morning space for artists, filmmakers, musicians, and creators who are navigating the real world of making art. On this show, we talk about positivity, but not the fluffy kind. We talk about what actually stops artists from moving forward, the struggles we all face, and how to move through them with clarity and purpose. We'll also highlight good things happening in the industry, share ideas, suggestions, and practical advice, and most importantly, have honest conversations. This is a live show, so if you're here, feel free to ask questions or join in. This is a place to reset, get grounded, and start the day moving forward as an artist. And good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well out there. We're going to be doing this show. I got a lot to read and a lot to talk about this morning. We're talking about filmmaking and we're talking about short films in particular. And the challenge on making short films and some of the great things that the advantages that you have by making a short film. And we're going to talk a little bit about the future and my project coming up. And I'll talk a little bit about my last film. And I'll start there because that's sort of the old news, and some of you who follow me might know about my last film. So my last film was called "And on That Day." It was a short film. I think it ran like 14 minutes, I think, which is pretty l- good length, I think, for a short film. I think anything after 20 minutes, I think it starts getting put into a different category, I think. Um, but it was a film that it was inspired, and I did a whole show on this, and I also showed the film at the beginning of that show that I did, and then I just talked about the film itself. Um, it was a film that was inspired from to me when I was 18 years old, and I'll just tell a quick story. But when I was 18 years old, I was working at a factory in the Bronx, and I was standing outside during lunch in front of this grocery store, and I was kind of eating a sandwich. It was a beautiful day out, I remember, and I was standing there, and there was a gentleman in front of me, and they called him Indio. They called him Indio, Indian. He was Dominican, but he looked like, I guess that was his nickname, and he looked Indian. And he was talking to me in Spanish, and he tells me, "What do you?" And he says to me in Spanish, he goes, "What are you doing here? ¿Qué tú haces aquí?" Pero que he goes, "Pero qué tú haces aquí?" He said it like that, like, "What are you doing here?" And I remember I was eating a sandwich, and I was like, "What?" I didn't understand what he meant, so I was like, "Well, I'm eating." And he goes, "No, no, what are you doing working here?" And I said, "Well, my mom got me this job, and I'm just working here." And he shook his head, and he was like, and in Spanish, he goes, "Bro," he goes, "don't stay here, don't work here." And then he points to a little walking bridge. Oh, I lost my signal here. Weird. Still having technical difficulties. Believe it or not, after the ice storm, still have some technical difficulties here in Nashville. So he looks at me, he shakes his head, he's like, "Don't stay here, man." And he points to this little tiny walking bridge right behind him. It was like a walking bridge that went over the Bronx River. And he says, "You see that bridge right there?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, he says, "If I had a nickel for every time I had to cross that bridge to come to this hellhole," well, he called it. It was a different term in Spanish, which I can't really, I can't really translate. But it was sort of like he was saying like a hellhole, like this horrible place. And he said, "I'd be a rich man right now if I had a nickel for every time I had to cross that damn bridge," you know. And I remember I kind of was like shook my head, and I was like, and I was 18, so I was like, "Ah, this old guy doesn't know what he's talking about." But it did stick with me, and I did leave that job after a while, just after having some discussion with someone or an argument with with the foreman, and I left that job and I didn't go back. But it always stuck with me, that whole idea. And then I thought, well, and when I started making films, I said, I've always had this idea, but I don't have a factory. I'm not going to go to the Bronx. I'm not going to, I have to change up the story into a my environment and things that I can actually do. So at the time, I had access to a real estate office, so I changed it up a little bit and made it a guy. But instead, what I did was I switched it and thinking, what if the guy, what if me stayed at that job for like 30 years and retired from that place? What would that be like after 30 years? You know, um, and that was the sort of the premise of the show of the film, that a guy who stayed at a dead end job for 30 years, and then on his last day of work before retiring, he gets pushed a little bit. It's almost like, just like, are you serious? My last day, I still have to go out this way. He decides that he's going to communicate to everybody in the office exactly what he feels. And that becomes the premise for the show, for the film. And then he gives a monologue at the end explaining his actions and his 30 years, you know. So that was the idea for that. Um, this next film, and I want to talk a little bit about short films in general and why I think that, that film, believe it or not, it was a short film, but it was hard to do because COVID hit, and I had shot it, and then I couldn't find an editor for a long time, and it was sitting there, and people were like getting upset, not upset, but people were asking me for it, and I'm like, man, I can't get anybody to edit this thing, and I didn't want to turn it over to just anybody. I wanted to be in the room to edit with them, and then the pandemic hit, and now I'm like, oh crap, now what? Now I really have nobody. So because I was home, I figured, well, let me try myself. It was a big confront all the footage to put it into a place and to try to piece it together. It was daunting to me, and even though it was a short film, I just didn't think I can do it. So I went online and I took a couple of classes online, since again I was home, everybody was home. I took a couple of courses, and I found a software, a very simple, basic editing software that I know I can manage. That it wasn't didn't have all. My films are very, very conversational, so there was no complex um, CGI needed or anything like that, and there was no AI. I didn't even really think of AI back then. This was only 5 years ago, but uh, I just wasn't thinking with it. So I got to work and I started editing this film, and I learned a lot. I learned about eyeline. I learned a lot about framing. I even learned about filmmaking just in general, how to make a better film, because I wasn't after I shot it. Then I was like, no, man, I should have done this, or I shouldn't. And I think most filmmakers look at their work that way anyway. From what I hear interviews, a lot of interviews with Scorsese. Scorsese could be at his opening. I think he was at the opening of Goodfellas, which I freaking love that film. He's sitting there. He goes, I knew I should have done this. I'm like, what are you talking about? But so I think we all look at things that way. But so I learned how to edit, and I edited my film. Now I tried to do the color correction and the sound, and I could not do it. I started trying to color it and try to give it a tone. I wanted it to look like it was a really old film from like the 70s or something. I wanted it to look soft. I wanted it to look not that clear. I wanted it to have a feel like it was a much older film. I could not get it. I could not do it. So I finally had to hire somebody online, because again, everybody was at home, and I had to operate it, do it that way. And I found somebody I think it was in Bulgaria. I found someone, and then I found someone else in Germany to do the audio, or it was switched up or something. Their names aren't in the film and stuff. But yeah, it was a trip. It was a trip, but I tell you, when I finished the film and I looked at it, and I think I played it for my wife, and she was like, "Wow, that's really good." And I played it for a few other people, like people that I trust, and they really liked it. They said, "Wow, it's really good." And they gave me a couple of notes here and there, and I looked at it again, and I kind of did tighten up a little bit of it, and I put it out, and it got to a lot of festivals. It went to the Manhattan Film Festival, the Tennessee International Independent Film Festival, the Golden Door Festival, went down to Phoenix, Seattle, a bunch of other festivals that I can't remember now, but a couple of them in New York, actually. and it was wonderful. It was wonderful, almost like an experiment. Like, how much of this can I do myself? And so I wrote it, cast it, shot it because a lot of the camera work was also me. Um, edited, edited it, did the music. I didn't do the music, but I actually got the musicians and got the songs and everything. Um, and yeah, put everything together. And I was very, very happy that I did it. And it's not, it's a lot of issues with it, but the fact that I did it all gave me some confidence to know that, oh, you know what, I could do this on my own. I could tell these short stories on my own. And then we moved to Nashville because this pandemic thing, we didn't know how long that was going to go on, and things were getting rough over there. And I was like, let's get the hell out of here. And we had some friends here in Nashville that I asked questions about, and we moved here. A place, apartment from a house to an apartment, unseen, stayed unseen, everything unseen. We got here and we started, and now I've been writing this now for about a year. This next film, and it's been tough to find actors. I had a couple of actors, but unfortunately, I took a little bit too long, and then I went through a couple of things here on a personal level that I had to confront and handle. And now I'm sort of like, okay, now I'm ready to shoot again, and I'm ready to to get back in the game again. So it's been a while that I've had anything that I've shot anything, and I hate that because I was trying to do. If you go back and you can see my on my IMDb, you'll see films every year for a while, a short film. But anyway, I'm back now. So my next film, I want to read a little bit about short films in general, because I think if you're a filmmaker and you're thinking, oh, you don't want to look at short films because, you know, nobody buys short films. Although now it's a little bit different because there are places that you can sell a short film. There's a lot of different platforms that show short films. As a matter of fact, so there is a place for them now, even more so than just a few years ago. So you can make some money if that's your biggest thing, is to sell money. For me, the short film was a calling card. It was a almost like a business card that I would be able to show people and say, this is what I did, and then they can look at it for what they need. I had an act. I played a small role in that film, in my last film, because I had an actor, but he backed out at the last minute, so I had to do the role myself. So you'll see me do a little cameo in there, and you know, it. So if they need an actor, they can see that, and I have other acting things because that's where I started originally in film. They can, if they direction, they can see direction, writing. I wrote the whole thing, casting. If they want any of those actors, I can. One of the actors was in another film of mine, and she told me that uh, that little short film that I shot, that I still have in the can, that I did put out on YouTube, but I'm going to actually submit it to festivals this year. That short film really got her a lot of work, believe it or not. She said she got 3 jobs off of that, just showing that one film. And I love that. That to me is just like, that's what it's about. So that's what it's like to me. Short films hold a unique and often underestimated power in a compressed time frame. Every frame, this is true, every frame, every line of dialogue, and every silence must carry weight. There's no room for filler, no sprawling subplots or extended expositions, just pure distilled storytelling. When done well, a short film can hit with emotional force, with the emotional force of a feature, sometimes even more intensely, because it demands focus and precision from both the filmmaker and the audience. In many ways, crafting a short film can be harder than creating a feature length project. A feature gives you time to build character arcs gradually, to let moments breathe, and to recover from minor missteps. A short film doesn't offer that luxury. You have to establish character, conflict, tone, and resolution in a fraction of the time while still making it feel complete and satisfying. It's like writing a powerful song instead of a full album. Every note has to count. Short films are also powerful calling cards, which is what I was saying. They showcase a filmmaker's voice, vision, and discipline in a concentrated form. Because of their brevity, they can travel widely through festivals and online platforms. There goes my camera again. Weird. Sorry, folks. Camera is flickering. Um, when a short film truly works, it proves that storytelling isn't about length, it's about clarity, heart, and the courage to say something meaningful in the most efficient possible way, or in the most efficient way possible. I guess it works both ways. Um, and it's true. I feel like it is more it is more difficult in my opinion. I mean, if I had a feature film, I can really sit there and really develop characters and give it a much larger and more precise, arc for each character, and really uh, flesh flesh out the characters. And I do that with the short film too, but you have to get to points a little bit faster. So you have to showcase certain things with visuals, and maybe inserts, and maybe music, and maybe an overhead shot, or even a drone shot, overhead fly high, which my film starts with the overhead because it's kind of showing the land, the lay of the land of where it takes place, and then the bridge that I mentioned, where the guy walked over that bridge, it shows the bridge, and the guy walking over the bridge. So I put that in there to give it time, that this guy has been doing this, and he's walking somewhere, and you don't know where he's walking to, but then you see him walk into an office. So within those seconds, I kind of like showed the land, the guy walking over the bridge, and then walking into an office. So then you start thinking like, oh, okay, he walks to work. He walks to work every morning, and then he's been there. As soon as you go walk in, the guy says, hey, because he's retiring, it's his last day. He says, and the guy comes up to him and goes, hey, congratulations, 30 years, man, that's amazing, So immediately, he's been working there for 30 years, and that bridge all kind of makes sense. So I would have taken that a much, and added more depth to it. I would have had a whole morning preparation to go to work, dressing, you know, making his coffee, and then walking out the door, and then seeing the same things, maybe a couple of times. You can really expand on it, and you can do that with all the characters getting ready for work to show up to this one location, right? Because that always fascinates me, um, with office. There's so many stories to be told. People say, "Oh, I don't know what Hollywood is doing." I don't understand. Sometimes I'm like, the stories are always the same. They're basically the same stories. I think I don't understand how, but there's so many stories. Like I don't even have. I'm not going to have enough time this lifetime, or next to tell as many stories as you can tell, because just an office in itself, you have, like, let's say you have an office of like 15 people. In this film, I had 6 people in my film, but let's say you had an office of 15 people. Well, the getting up in the morning, every 15 people have to get up in the morning around the same exact time, get dressed, get into their vehicles or transportation, and get to this one location, this all of them into this one location. And now they have to interact for 8 9 hours, and then they all go to their separate lives again. How many stories are in there? I mean, there's hundreds of stories. So that to me fascinates me, about writing and just stories in general. But my latest film I want to talk a little bit about is about brothers. And I have a brother. My brother and I love each other tremendously. We're very, very close. We have the same mother, different fathers, so that kind of gives us a little bit of a different dynamic than other brothers. We lost our mother. I never met my dad. They lost their father, during COVID. Tragically, my brother and my sisters, and it was very painful. My brother and sisters are very close, and we got closer after we lost our loved ones. So we text each other every morning. We have a group text where we say, have a great day, love you, and we send each other things, and it's every single day since since our mom passed, because my mom used to do that, so during since that time, that's what we do, and we're very, very close. Um and so I thought to myself, I wanted to write a story about brothers, but my brother and I have had a really good relationship. We've had, when we were younger, we fought like anybody else would fight, but like any siblings fight. But we never really like at each other's. So we never really disliked each other or anything like that. It was never like that. We actually had a good relationship. So I wanted to, again, I like to take things and kind of put a twist on it. So I thought to myself, I was reading the Bible story of Cain and Abel, and I thought, my gosh, it's like, what a tragedy, if you don't know that story in the Bible, Cain and Abel, well, what's a brother who based a lot of jealousy going on there, and favoritism, and blame for certain, just blame, and then finally a murder, and then obviously I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to go the murder route, but I thought, what it would be interesting to see two brothers, not young brothers, two older brothers, in their 70s, have a conversation about losing their mother, but having been, estranged for a while, and having to be brought together again by the loss of their mom. And there's always a bond between families, right? Like my mother, my grandparents, they were the bond between my family. And when they passed, me and my older sister, we said to ourselves, everybody's gone. I guess you and I are the bond now. We have to be what they were, and I try to do the best I can. I try to communicate with all my nieces and nephews, and we're very active on social media. I talked to my brother, like last night we were chatting about Star Trek and sports and things like that. So we're very much close in that respect, and I thought, what it would be interesting to tell a story like this, but where they were on that bond that put them together, that held them together, is now gone. Even though they weren't close, they still had this bond. And that was a very interesting thing, because now it's really severed. Now they have nothing to hang on to, and if they want to hang out to each other, the only thing that they have that can remind them and keep them close to their mother is each other. There's this whole dynamic of like you losing that part of yourself, and the only thing that can keep you connected to it is the mother that's gone. So now your only connection is those two brothers. We can keep our mother's hope, love alive if we stay together, but they have a lot of tension between them. There's a lot of jealousy, and there's a lot of issues. So my latest short film is called Not Our Time, and I'm just going to read something that I put together a long time ago, actually. um, so Not Our Time is a deeply intimate story about two brothers in their mid 70s who have lost their 100-year-old mother. The final thread holding their fractured family together. In the quiet aftermath of her passing, they're forced into the same room, same memories, and the same unresolved history they've spent decades avoiding. What begins as a somber farewell slowly turns into a reckoning, as grief becomes the doorway to long buried truth. So, um, you know, obviously, I don't want to give too much away about what's happening, but when you have things that are unresolved, sometimes it's really easy to just not talk about them if you don't have to see the person, but you always have a connection to them in some way. You'll be there for birthday parties, for Christmas, for different events, all holidays, and then you go off to your separate thing. You don't have to confront that, what's long buried, right? Those truths that were long buried, the pain, the grief, whatever is the jealousy, whatever is there. You don't have to confront it, because you don't have to see them only for that small period of time, right? But what if that small period of time goes away? You know, and so at its heart, Not Our Time explores a complex sibling rivalry shaped by jealousy, favoritism, and wounds that never properly healed. As the brothers sort through their mother's belongings and confront her final wishes, fragments of a dark and painful past begin to surface, reshaping everything they thought they understood. They stood about they understood about each other and about themselves. The tension isn't loud; it's layered, restrained, and deeply human. I think that's what I like about uh, writing and directing is because there's always a climax in films, and it seems like you have to if you cry and scream in a film and you are very impressive and you get that out, there's a good chance that your film will be nominated for something. If you kill someone at the end, there's horror, if there's just a lot of emotional darkness, and I always thought, that does happen in life. There is a lot of grief in life and people screaming and getting to a certain point. But a lot of times it's really just a conversation that's almost, you're not trying to cry, you're trying to not cry. That's the restraint. You're trying not to cry. There's more power in not trying to cry than crying. Crying means you've given in to the thing and you can't hold it anymore, which does happen, of course, and is powerful and can be used incredible. But sometimes just in the eyes of holding that in, not wanting to burst in front of someone because of you don't want to be you don't want to give the satisfaction that you're crying, and that holding back, that is very, very powerful. And I love to explore that. So that's what I'm kind of exploring with this film. Is kind of a focal point of restraining the emotion, what you really want to say, and as the film progresses, and I'm building an arc here that where it's starting to surface, and it's starting to, and that's how people really are. So if you watch my last film, and on that day you see Robert's getting pushed and his last day, his boss calls him and he says, "Hey, Robert," he goes, "I'm glad you're retiring and everything, but I still need those things done by the end of the night. I need that all those folders done, and da 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 da. And we need to get together about the closings that we have, and all. It was a real estate office, and any listings coming up and all that stuff. So we still got to do that together, right?" And then Robert's sort of like on the phone, and he kind of hangs up the phone, and I wanted to create a moment where he just presses down the phone, like he just presses down. That's his first sign that he's like, "God, 30 years, my last day should be the day that I don't do anything. Everyone should be just congratulating me. We should just have a party for the day. I gave 30 years to this company, and here I am having to finish my day with not only meetings, but I have a stack of papers and contracts to go through and all these things." And he gets that little frustration, and then it builds up, but it doesn't build up. He never screams. He never, I don't want him to scream. He's holding it in and he wants to let it out the way he wants to let it out. And he does. And he lets it out in a very satisfying way. And then he reflects on it, and I think that to me was fun to put together, because if somebody would read it, I think someone would say like, "Oh, but he should be yelling and he upset, and everyone should," and I was like, "No, he's I don't want him to do that. That's been done. I want him to kind of do something else." And so he goes around every single person and he tells them exactly what he thinks, and he upsets the office, with his final goodbye. And he walks out, and then he justifies it by his final monologue. And so if anybody wants to see that film, by the way, it's on YouTube. You can watch it. Just type in "And on That Day," John Henry Soto. So like I said, it's a biblical relationship, like of Cain and Abel, but without the physical violence, obviously. Instead, it examines a quieter, more haunting consequences of envy and resentment that linger across decades. It asks what happens when time runs out before forgiveness arrives, and whether reconciliation is still possible once the person who bound you together is gone. So that's my film. It's going to be, I'm going into what's called a pre production. I need actors. I had, like I said, I had two actors, but they kind of fell out. I might revisit a one of those actors. I don't know yet. But I had some stuff happen the last year and a half, and it's been a little challenging. But I am back now, and things are going, a lot better now, and I'm more focused now, and more in present time, thinking about my current space and who I'm interacting with and who's influencing me, and all that stuff is very, very clear to me right now. So I'm ready to start getting ready out there and start shooting. And I need a couple of other actors too. I need two younger actors to play the kids of these two parents, of these two older brothers, children, preferably a son and a daughter. So anyway, I'm putting that out there, so I'll be in more communication on there. All right, I've gone past 30 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. As always, this is my Friday night show. Um, whew, it's always great to communicate with y'all and get back feedback, and to hear your views on some of the subjects that I bring to you here Monday to Fridays at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topics always are based around entertainment, but I always dive into just life things in general, and living a life that's meaningful and impactful and can influence someone if that's what you're trying to do, or at least just influence those around you, your loved ones, and how to find the right group to belong to and people to hang out with, and what groups are damaging you, or what people are hurting you and not really have your best interests at heart. Those things are all the time on my show, even though it's not really about that. It's about film and music and art, but art is emotion. Art has a lot to do with life and living, and the livingness, the talent of livingness, and how we can build that talent and get the skill to live better, and the tools like the way to happiness and drug-free world, and all those tools that I use to live a better life. It all comes up. So I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate all the love. And it's been a wonderful week. Thank you all for tuning in this week. I will be Sunday night. Don't forget that I have Oba Babatunde, the award-winning actor, incredible actor, is going to be on the show 7 p.m. Central, and we're going to be interviewing him, having a conversation with him. It's always a pleasure to have on. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I want to thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Until next time. And as always,